Okay, we'll start the City of Olivet's Planning and Community Design Commission for June 1st, 2023 to orders. Sorry for the delay. Roll call. Carol, would you mind it's filling in? All right, thank you.
Member Sam Wallach,
Present.
member Tim Spiegelglass,
Absent.
member Dan Rosenberg,
Absent.
member Brian Lewis,
Present.
member Jody Rich, or secretary.
Absent.
Absent. And Chairman Rob Durgill.
Present.
Rob is here, and Carol Wagoner, Vice Chairman. I am here.
All right, good. So thanks everybody for being in attendance. Sorry, we got a little late start. But we'll move on to kind of the review of the commission processes. Typically, right after this, we do or ask if there's anybody in the general audience that has any general comments that are not related to items on the agenda. If you have a comment, that's related to something on the agenda, we ask that you wait till that agenda item, comes up. The typical process that we do is there'll be a staff report that will go through the particular item on the agenda. There'll be some questions and answers with commission members. Then we typically bring on the petitioner to kind of further discuss it if it's needed. Some they don't. But then at that point in time, we'll ask for general comments related to that agenda item. We do ask that everybody, if in the public who's comes in front, to make sure they come up to the podium, state their name and address for the record, and then also make sure that the microphone is on. And for those attending via Zoom, if we have that, we do ask you to raise your hand. There's like a little icon button typically at the bottom of the screen. So click on that, raise your hand, and then we will typically bring you up onto the panel. But we also ask you to, usually the default setting is no video and no microphone. So look for those, because we really would like to have those turned on with the microphone turned on. It'll speed things up. So appreciate it. Hey, Carlos, did I miss anything?
No, sir. You
All
got
right.
everything covered.
Good. So Carlos, before we do public comments, we'll do the comprehensive plan update.
And real quickly, Chairman, I also would like to introduce Jennifer Conley. She's online with us. Miss Conrad, excuse me, Jennifer. Sorry about that. Joins us as our new deputy city clerk in there, and she'll be assisting our department prepare the minutes, agendas, and things of that nature, along with the council packets and things of that. So welcome Jennifer, and thank you,
Jennifer. We look forward to work.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Me too.
All right. All right, and everybody, thanks for the participation at the community workshop and ice cream social a couple of weeks ago. It was a great event. I counted about 135 heads that attended that night's event. The mayor counted 150, and she is the mayor, so I'll go with the mayor. But that's pretty impressive. We've had our facilities full before, probably at least three other times that were similar, where we had the chambers and the community rooms at a good capacity, and appreciate all the residents that attended and participated. Of those 135, 85 of them signed up to be participants on the website, or signed in and that's impressive, because if you look at those 85, they were signing on behalf of their spouses or partners and families that attended. So 85 is 1 out of 100 residents in the city of Olivet. And if you consider 25% are 16 and younger, it's 1 out of 75 residents participated at that event. And that's great. Our consultants will now look in within those numbers to determine how they're located, north, south, Olive, what some of the ethnicities are, so we can kind of really focus on getting a good, equitable and inclusive component into this plan. So it was great, and there was a lot of great discussions, a lot of kid activities, and even the kids participating in some of the surveys, as you saw the roller coaster And that wasn't the only person that asked for one. So, that puts it up on the list. From that point on, the consultants are collating all the information that was taken. We are going to continue to permit the current survey 1 to continue to June 23rd. And what that does is that it covers one of our big subdivision association meetings that will occur next weekend. And then also Olivet Night Out, where again, we can distribute information to have people access the website and sign up and take the survey information. So there's 2 big opportunities in there. So it's been pretty impressive. Over 300 surveys have been submitted. So that's even better in there. So we're really excited. The next step is, the information is being collated. They are meeting with staff to talk about land use aspects next week. And then in July 13th, I'll be sending out a note tomorrow that will be the next advisory committee meeting. That'll be a Thursday, July 13th. And then the advisory committee has already saw preliminary drafting of some of the vision statements for that. And we'll continue on and go through that process. So again, thank you to everyone that attended the event. And the event activities are online. And of course, the olivetcomplan.com has a lot more information regarding that process. So Chairman, if there's any questions, or Don, anything else you want to add?
I don't have any questions, but does anybody on the commission have any questions? I think a lot of us were in attendance, which was great. Anybody in the audience have any questions for Carlos? If you haven't seen it and you're an Olivet resident, even businesses, we really do encourage you guys to take a look at this and get involved, and maybe, answer some of the, go through some of these surveys. It'll be helpful, because the idea is just to try to get a broad spectrum of everybody's thoughts and opinions, as we move forward. So check it out. I appreciate it. All right, good. So at this point in time, we're going to ask for general comments that aren't related to anything on the agenda item. Does anybody in the audience have any general comments? Scanning, and I'm not seeing any, so that's good. Carlos, is there anybody on Zoom?
No, sir. The only person is the petitioner. So
Petitioner? Okay, good. So we'll move on. And we'll move on to old business, and it's item A, 529 Long Acres Drive.
okay,
Carlos?
Chairman, this is one of 2 houses that are located on Long Acres Lane, which is the new subdivision, the Birdie Lane subdivision off of Old Bonham, just 1 lot west of Dealman Road. At our last meeting, we had this petition and 570 Long Acres combined in the presentation. I'm going to break them apart because they're 2 separate petitions. One with some concerns that were raised by several residents regarding the grading. But this petition, though, is on the west side of the street. It's a typical design that we've seen within that subdivision that's been approved previously by the commission. They increased the amount of masonry, and this petition application has a side entry garage facing north. And given that the lot meets all the SR district requirements, it's solely on for community design review, and that's just aesthetic review. This lot also is right adjacent to the stormwater basin, and is provided an exemption from having its own on-site retention on there, and it is below the average square footage that would have been permitted. The petitioner is here in attendance, and I'd be glad to answer any specific questions. If not, regarding this petition, I'd ask the commission to consider action.
It's my recollection last time, we wanted to kind of make sure before we moved on any of these to make sure we address the adjacent neighbor complaints.
Correct. There was some concerns about some enforcement and also some stormwater issues.
Right.
More specifically to the lot address is 570.
Right.
And we'll talk to those. If not, the petitioner's here, or I can, if we want to jump into that too. I just don't want to tie the two.
Well, how does everyone on the commission feel? I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other. I just remember that's what seemed to be the consent, with everybody.
Yeah, we can probably break them, because I think it really was at the end, like that 569, 570 kind of
Carol, do you have?
I concur. I think we should.
Yeah,
keep
I'm
separate.
fine.
Keep them separate? Okay,
Carlos,
go, go.
is 519 the stormwater area? where it listed
Yes,
there?
this green
Yeah,
parcel
okay.
here.
So that's why they don't need their own retentions.
Correct. Well, and because this MSD has an approved detention plan for the subdivision as a whole, none of these lots require or on-site detention per our ordinance.
As long as it's directed there, I imagine.
As long as it's part of the subdivision, it had nothing to do with how it's directed.
Hmm.
And there.
Okay, that's, maybe I'm not understanding, but I guess just because you have something there doesn't. mean
No,
it's
and it's a good question, and there was something we discussed. So they do have swells that run to the detention behind these properties that go parallel with Long Acres. These two back here, what MSD required was for them to provide an undisturbed area in that back perimeter, and it's actually recorded within their plats. We'll see it when we talk about 570,
Okay.
and that was the required mitigation for stormwater per MSD.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? I don't think we have any questions or comments. Let's just ask if there's any general or any public comments related to this agenda item. Seeing none in the audience, Carlos, can you check the online?
Mr. Freeman, is there any comments that you'd like to have before on 529?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, good, good. So no other questions or comments or discussion? Do I hear a motion?
Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I'd like to motion to approve the petition for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 529 Long Acres Lane as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Development dated June 1st, 2023, subject to staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner. Do I hear a second?
Second,
And seconded by Brian Lewis. Carlos, please call the vote.
Commissioner Waller,
approved,
Commissioner Lewis,
approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
Commissioner Jurgell,
Approved.
and the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, good, good. And now we'll move on to 570 Long Acres Drive.
Okay, Chairman, here you have the petition for 570 Long Acres. This was also at our previous agenda. And where there was several inquiries by adjacent property owners regarding the grading, stormwater drainage, and some enforcement issues during construction of the subdivision. The staff was asked to contact the petitioner to get into contact with the adjacent property owners. And I'll let him speak into that. I know he made attempts to contact in there, and I think at least I've heard from one resident that they did have a discussion in there. I'm not going to say in terms of a resolution or so, but they did meet and talk about the site in there. And I know the two adjacent neighbors are here in there. But before going to that, I do want to kind of talk about this petition. Again, the grading within this petition isn't directed to the stormwater basin for the site. There are two basins on the site grounds. This one doesn't. What MSD required in there, and you'll see back here, is a undisturbed buffer in which that is supposed to mitigate the stormwater on the site grounds. Now, under our stormwater management ordinance, only the house footprint is exempt from having retention required on the site. And because this is a subdivision that's been approved by the Metropolitan Sewer District with its own full detention system, it is exempt. But detention is not exempt for any of the accessory structures. So the pool itself will have to provide some type of mitigation for that stormwater that's generated from the pool grounds in there, because that was not accounted for when we did the preliminary reviews in there and the regrading. So when you look at the pool and the flat deck work area here, that will be required to have its own on-site detention separate from, of course, from the house in there. Now, there was concerns. There was two components to the concerns. One was regarding to more of an enforcement issue during the activity of construction and some erosion, siltation, and flooding that was experienced by the adjacent owners, specifically back towards July and August. But still, that overall, that some of the grading changes adversely impacted the adjacent neighbors. Regarding to the stormwater and how it's handled on this site, I've blown up this a little bit better. This is still the existing stormwater plan that was submitted by the petitioner. And you can see the two houses here off of Dealman that directly abut the proposed, well, the existing lot with the proposed house. And you can see along here that the petitioner is proposing to have a defined swell that runs through here, redirecting that stormwater all the way parallel along the property line to the back of the yard, then natural flow back to where essentially is a floodplain that will become floodplain after the new FEMA maps are adopted, and that's specifically up by the bike trail in there. And that really would redirect any impact in there. They are proposing a retaining wall along the front yard, which would help mitigate that. And then with what they're doing with the pool and flattening out of the backyard area, that again removes a lot of the slope activity along the adjacent property, and that kind of mitigates either slowing down the velocity of the water, or two, redirecting the velocity of the water to the lower points, which are specifically back at the back edge of the retaining wall. So I did want to point those out. We never had an opportunity to go through the site plan from our previous approval after we had talked about those comments. Overall, I think they've addressed what is required by code. Be glad to answer any specific questions, and we do have the petitioner online, and I believe there are two neighbors here that may want to speak.
What was the proposed stormwater retention for the pool?
For the pool, it's not illustrated or listed, but they would have to provide on-site retention in there. So
Has that been discussed? With,
no, not with the petitioner.
but are we approving the pool right now too? Or no?
Yes. Mhm.
So shouldn't we know what?
Well, the code kind of says what they have to provide a specific area or size, and whether it would be a rock basin or a flow well, that would still be designed the same. The key thing that the commission may be concerned would be, where would that location be? That might be something the petitioner can answer.
Well, just to
in
make
there.
sure that that's what they're planning on.
Yep.
You know. and-
Well, and it's not, again, it's something that's required by code. It's below grade, but it's going to be required by code.
It's noted within the conditions,
Okay,
actually.
good. That makes, I get that. Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions? Go ahead. Brian.
Yeah, and we'll hear obviously, I imagine, from everyone, but I guess taking aside what happened or current concerns during construction, Carlos, do you feel comfortable that this will address any future, not worried about, not talking about the now or the past? Will this address future concerns around water, in your opinion?
Well, it won't completely eliminate any future potential impact. The grading has changed. I mean, no doubt about it. Compared to what was there before, it's been altered, but the direction still continues in the grand scheme where it's supposed to go, to the lower points in there. At that time, it was, all dirt. And the siltation had failed, and we had a pretty significant rain event in there that I would like to say is infrequent, but may become a norm over time in there. Once the property is improved, the swells put in place, it should minimize and not be recurrent like the conditions that they faced, unless there was like a even more intensity of rain. And there was 2 days of quite the intensity, but I could not say that we could get an event again that could cause significant amount of stormwater going to lower properties and there. I think what they're doing at least tries to address it, but I don't want to make a promise that this would work.
No, of course, because you never know. I'm just curious, other things that you would suggest that wouldn't be above and beyond crazy, ridiculous to ask, but would also increase.
Well, I think by leveling with the pool and leveling some of that backyard and redirecting it, that does help in the process. And again, within that 12 feet, having that swell, the full length from that front yard here running all the way back, outside of when we get an event that will overfill that swell, you know, that swell should redirect that water straight to the back.
How deep is that swell gonna be?
It looks like it has a,
Sorry, I'm on a Zoom call.
hold on one second.
My information and report.
So it looks like it has about, probably 6 inches or so.
Yeah,
And it narrows down as you get further back, so it could be a little bit deeper. One of the things we want to make sure is that it's still, like you could still mow it, you know, or maintain the grass, or because if it gets too tight, then it overgrows and. things
Yeah, I'm
like
just thinking ahead 20 years kind of.
well, which way does the front yard drain to?
that.
I
The
mean,
front
you got
yard
that
drains towards
slope-
the street here, except right here, there's a break that goes back.
And it looks pretty steep. there.
Mhm.
That's why I wasn't sure about the
Yeah.
depth of the swale right there.
And
But-
it only takes in this because remember, there's a curb here along the cul-de-sac. So it's just this front area here.
Good, Kurt.
Carlos, are the swales, I know we've talked about this in a bit, but are the swales recorded on the plat? Or how do we know that in 20 years or 30 years or whatever, that they're gonna be maintained?
That I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. And there will be no different than how do we know, you know, a house is gonna continue to keep a paint, you know, in there. It's something somebody would have to research and look back and say, hey, there should have been a swell here over time. There's no way to ensure that
Okay.
that is set as property owners change over time.
Any other questions or comments for Carlos? I think we should hear from the petitioner.
All right. Okay, Mr. Freeman, I'm going to transfer you over now as a panelist. And again, if you can turn on your mic and your video, be greatly appreciated.
Carlos, can you hear me? I'm in a car right now.
Okay. Chairman Satterwhite?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Okay, yes, we can hear you, sir.
I met with Tom, who's the immediate neighbor to the right, and I've stopped at both houses to try to meet with them to discuss. With talking to Tom, you know, we're gonna cut the swale in as per the grading plan. And then what I said, it totally up to him on his own property. I would build a little berm for him to help make sure the water stays off his property and stays in the swale. This was our discussion today.
Okay, good. I appreciate you working with the neighbors. And have you talked to made attempts to try to contact the other neighbor?
I did, and we weren't able to connect. I've stopped by and I gave his son my name and number to call, and I've never heard back, but obviously I know everyone's busy and you know, I get it. So that's why I stopped by twice and ran back over there to talk to him.
No, appreciate that. Okay. What is your planned, you know, stormwater retention for the pool? I'm just curious.
Basically, I'll send it back to the engineers to do the design for that, and whatever they come back with for the per code is what we'll have to do.
Okay, good. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Just
Go ahead.
curious, I know you weren't able to talk to the other neighbor and hopefully we'll hear, but would you be willing to do the same accommodation if they wanted it?
Well, I'd be happy to help out, but going down to the next house to the north, which is basically down at the bottom of the hill, he's collecting water, not besides from my lots. He's connecting it from the 3 houses above him. And I don't know I'd be happy to help out in any way I can. We'll cut our swales in and do what we need to do on our lot. But I don't think I can remedy him not getting water from the 3 houses above him.
No, but if we can try to make sure that it's not coming from the, you know, the proposed residents, I think that's. kind
Well,
of
the proposed residents, some of the water naturally went there always. With the pool and all that they're doing in the back will help that substantially
Good.
a lot better than it was. And I think that's a positive aspect of it. I don't, we'll grade the swales and do what we can do, and I'll be happy to, divert as much as I can. But after walking the site today and other days, he gets a lot of water from up above, and he's getting it from the 3 lots above him and besides me. And the nice thing about ours, and as Carlos explained earlier, with the curb of the street and with the retaining walls of the pool and the detention, we're actually going to lessen the amount of water that's going to go down his direction than was there originally.
Well, that's definitely the goal that we want to do. So,
No, I agree with you. I don't want to be a bad neighbor, and I don't want to do whatever I can within my control to alleviate that. But after walking it, even if I do a little, the water's still going to go down. He's the low point on the right side. So he gets all the neighbors runoff and this one lot. But I think with the pool and the retaining walls we're putting in, we're definitely lessening the velocity of the water, as I will say, and the amount of water. Because the front yard's going towards the street, that small side yard that we're going to help Tom to the east to alleviate any water going up onto his property. And I'd be happy to meet with the other homeowner and discuss whatever I can do to try to help them out. I'd be happy to do it, but I can't do something that is going to be, I can't do something that's going to force water onto the property below him more than his. Do you see where I'm coming from? Because there's another house to the north of him that gets the water runoff also.
once it gets to the backyard, doesn't it move to the northwest?
It does, but it goes across that last property owner's property.
Okay.
So I mean, with the buffer and everything for MSD, that water runoff goes through my 2 properties onto his property to the bike trail floodplain.
I guess I'm not looking at these contours right. Carlos, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't once it gets to the back of the house and, gets around the pool, wouldn't it go more to the northwest?
The sheet flow does start slowly changing directions towards the northwest. Yes,
That is correct, but it's still
how it kind of pops up here, where this starts going towards the southeast, and this starts going to the northwest. And what I can do is, Chairman, if you don't mind, if I can go
No,
back to
I think it'd be good.
to the broader survey here.
no, I was parked here. Hold on.
Like this.
So yeah, somewhere at that point that it starts switching sides.
What's directly to the north of the property? Is it the creek?
No, there's an existing house just right about here. Bear with me 1 second and I can pull that up. So you can see the house structure here at 585, and then there is a house, there's a driveway right here and a house kind of catty cornered. So here's where that lot line kind of runs through. I'm going to jump back over to our PDF file. This may not be working on online, but that house is roughly about on this area right here.
So where the water's gonna go in the uninterrupted area is more to the left to not impact that house.
According to that plan, yes. And then we do have the, this isn't on tonight's agenda, but if you bear with me 1 second, the property right behind them that we're looking at is petitioning for a subdivide. So we can take a look at it here. I could have done an overlay. I didn't think about that in here. So here's where the new house and pool would be placed here. And then you can see a majority of that is headed northwest. In there, that break turns here and then starts going directly north and then to the south northeast on this side. And I think you can see here. But Mr. Freeman's talking about that's what's coming down
Yeah.
on here and then along the edge there.
Well, we don't want to make it worse for people, you know. And it sounds like potentially what Mr. Freeman's saying is it could make it worse.
I wasn't hearing. you.
You weren't? Okay,
No.
good, maybe.
Does anybody else?
No, I think it's.
No, what I'm saying is I don't want to, just like Carlos said earlier, I can't say it's going to be worse, but from the way that it's grading, it should not be worse. But I don't have the crystal ball. If we have a 4-inch rain, what happens?
Would you be open to adding some extra stormwater retention from the roofs, the gutters from the roofs into, since you're already gonna have to do something with the pool?
I think what you're going to find out is that I'm going to run that to the storm detention anyway. But that roof gutter on that left side, majority, as I spoke to Tom before, there's only going to be 2 gutter downspouts on that right side.
Mhm.
And that's the low side, the 1-story area of the master bedroom. So that roof isn't going to collect a lot of water.
So it's all gonna, majority is gonna move to the other.
So
side.
it's all really going to go, the main roof in the majority of the house will go to the east or west, not the east. The master bedroom, that small single side that you're looking at in the plans, would be on the east side, which isn't going to collect that much water.
Okay,
Chair?
go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like the developer has paid a lot of attention to this issue
Mhm.
and designed the site carefully. I mean, and probably as well as we could expect.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't predict unknown future rains. I mean, that's obviously the weather's changing, the rains are coming in harder, how much harder, into what intensity, we have no way of knowing that. But it sounds like for what we know, he's done a really good job to me.
Okay, good. Anybody else? How's everybody else feel? Good. Okay, let's, right now, Harry, unless you have anything else you'd like to say, otherwise I'm gonna request some public comments.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comments? Come on, yeah.
Hi, Tom Knoll, 575 Dealman, directly east of the subject property. Thanks for the additional work and additional chance to get out in front of you guys. As mentioned, I spoke with Carlos and Mr. Freeman today. I maintain that grading is still an issue. The proposed 677.5 feet above sea level, I guess, is well above the 670 even that was disclosed to this committee in the 2021 site plans that were approved. For context, this is 10 feet higher than my house on property that used to be level. So it's a pretty standard large hill. In my house, it's 5 feet above my back property line. So with the grade and the proposed walkout basement, as you can, oh, sorry, we shifted. With the grade and the proposed walkout basement, about half of the building is fully visible as a 3-story building, 2.5, and proposed to be right on the setback of 12 feet. While undoubtedly fitting the conditions of the committee, I would not say this fits the community design standards of building with your neighbor in mind. That said, I met with Mr. Freeman today. We had a very nice talk. He's a very nice guy. We discussed the water issues. And he agreed the current swale in place is not doing its job. He suggested adding a berm, as mentioned. The retaining wall that I had previously kind of discussed going from the house all the way to the property line to get rid of. He says it's not possible because it goes above the sewer lateral. So understood on that. I thought this was a good kind of suggestion. With all that said, I had a couple modest changes I would like to propose. If we can lower the foundation by a foot, I think any little bit helps. That would stay within the current level and allow 8 inches for the standard 8 inches for the foundation. If we could move the house 2 feet off the current setback line to allow for the movement of the swale and the addition of a 2-foot burn, I would then approve the slight elevation changes and access to my property. My understanding would be a 2-foot burn would need 6 feet of elevation to the side to meet the 3-to-1 elevation rule. So that would go 2 feet in to his property, it would go 4 feet into mine. I'm fine with that. As long as we don't lose any big trees over it, but I think it's some, we're pretty far ahead. He seems like a good guy. I'm happy to get new neighbors and new kids for my kids to play with. And I think these are some modest changes that make sense, but and could be done, but I'm not an architect, so maybe moving the whole thing 1.5 feet or 2 feet isn't possible, but just my request. Any questions I can answer?
None
Okay.
at this time. So
Thank you guys so much for taking my consideration.
Appreciate it.
And thank you, Mr. Freeman, for our discussion today.
I may. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Shea, I'm at 585 Dealman Road. I've lived.
Please speak into the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Shea, 585 Dealman Road. I've lived in Olivet for 19 years. We moved 5 years ago to this property within Olivet. So, I think as Carlos mentioned, we actually I was kind of oblivious to this house coming up beside us, but we had a big flood last year, and I want to emphasize that we're not really saying that it's the only contributor to the flooding in our basement. But everyone that I've talked to suggests that it was certainly a contributor. And I think and that was multiple people, including Carlos. I think there's a couple of things that I wanted to point out, which I don't know if we fully discussed last time. One was you're having trouble pulling it up. So one was there was obviously a significant grade, and I think there's one issue was that this issue was identified by Olivet, prior to any construction was being built, and that really nothing was being acted upon except for the inclusion of silt fences. So I think that was one issue. I think the other issue is that we did try to contact Mr. Freeman after the floods, and we really essentially got no response. I had an email, a copy and paste of the email up there, which I did show last time, but he wasn't here to respond to it. But essentially it said that that the outflow of the property was to the northwest, which is sort of the aggregate, the integration of all the water that was coming off the property, but not specifically related to our property, which was identified because of the grading situation, which was essentially flowing into our backyard. And so I don't know, he said he walked the property, or the email that we got said he walked the property, but that that they didn't need to meet with us at that time. So I was quite disappointed with that. I also wanted to point out that he came out to our house at like 10 or 11 o'clock today. I was at work, and so I didn't have a chance to speak with him, but this is the last day before this particular meeting. So we had the prior meeting, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago when I was here. So this is, you can see here, there's all the flooding changes. Oh, I also want to point out that we had a lot of silt deposition at that time with sort of the great flood. But you can obviously see the grading changes between the left picture and the right picture after they did everything. And then I listed the number of people that have seen it, but I think from what Olivet had seen on the initial plan and everyone else. I mean, I think there is water flowing onto our property, whether it's an incredible amount or a little bit, I can't quantify that. Can you go to the next slide? And so this was the slide. This is the email, the final email that we got essentially was denied. They said their engineers had seen the property and they didn't think that we were getting any extra water. In fact, they were actually thinking that we got less water. So this was contrary to what everyone else was saying. At that time, I do not believe there was any mitigation for water coming down. And I think at that time, Carlos said that there was no water, that they had not addressed that concern that Olivet had placed, which I think is on the next slide. Yeah, oh no, maybe the next slide. There. Oh yeah, this is the slide where this issue was flagged by Olivet, which actually Tom brought to my attention because like I said, I was being pretty oblivious, but they had at that point suggested a retaining wall. So anyway, so if you just go to the last slide, I think these are my issues with this whole process. I mean, this is the first time I've had a house built next to me. I feel like this issue with the runoff should have been, addressed prior to actually develop prior to the grade changes. And I think, I mean, even though he said he's sort of willing to work with me, I mean, this is the first day that I feel like he's actually been willing to work. And I feel like there should be some sort of enforcement issue related to this. And that, if there isn't any enforcement issues, there should be some way to, voice our grievances without waiting essentially 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments or any more public comments related to this?
I'm curious, the comment, Carlos, on the grading, the height. Is that something, I've not heard that before, where if it was brought 2 years ago and estimated to be X number of feet and now it's this, is that something that comes up before? Or is that a common thing, an uncommon thing? Is that a code thing?
It depends. I mean, the finished grading is supposed to be per plan. That pile that you see there is excavation fill that's noted in there, and there should have been, a better attempt to ensure that, that the siltation would have held it, especially after that July, August rain. It was, a bad event that happened at a wrong time on that site.
I guess I'm
Yeah.
talking more to like the initial plans, if they were saying it was gonna be, I mean, I forget the number, 670 feet, and now it's coming in to propose 678 or something.
In terms of the height of the
Yeah.
elevation. No, it's something that we see routinely, and we've backed away from tying in subdivisions the specific spot elevation because they're somewhat arbitrary, and they don't necessarily, that rectangle that you'll see here does not necessarily reflect the shape or the location of where that house is after it's been designed.
Okay.
So we tried to back out of setting a specific elevation in there. We do take a look at it and make a determination on the overall height and all that. And within its street, it matches no different than we would see in new home development and in any other subdivision. What I do understand is that from looking at it from the back, it's a change. It's different in there, and whether that foot adds additional capacity to that, whether that is the right design for that, it's hard because I have a side yard backing up to a rear yard, and that really is where the friction is. In there, could there be other amicable designs in there? Sure, I'm sure a different designer could come up with something different, but this is what's before you, and it's within the spirit of those guidelines.
Carlos, do the street elevation change?
The street elevation here in
No.
the cul-de-sac, no.
And, I didn't see any front, elevations to kind of show where the street is compared. What it is, just because, like a lot of times we try to avoid mounding. of
Within
houses.
yeah. Hold on 1 second. Let's go back here. I'm not sure if they have a cross section here. Yeah, that's one of the things we didn't request in the process was to get a cross section along that street. So the only elevation you have is kind of that side here.
And I'm not the architect at all, but a designer, but I'm, looking at that side elevation, I know that Mike and others, like, we usually request a little bit more in terms of windows or uniqueness on the side versus the one window. Curious if anyone else, maybe we're not even approving that right now, but Carlos, do you mind going back to the side elevation?
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know, others would know better.
I'm an engineer, so.
I'm a lawyer.
Carol, you're on.
I'm not a designer.
I think it's broken. I mean, just if you want my opinion, it looks like it is broken up, rather than just one solid, face. It does, the fact that it goes down, more.
I concur.
Okay.
I mean, if there was no articulation whatsoever, I'd say, yes, there's a problem, but there is some there, and
Yeah, and I'm only reflecting what I've heard others say
Yeah.
in the past in terms of adding, but
yeah.
I don't particularly feel strongly either way.
Carlos, if you go to the contours, can we count the contours to kind of see what was
Yeah.
kind of existing or what is shown on the left versus?
So you
what's-
can see the 672 here that kind of gets to the curb
Yeah,
here, and then their top of foundation is a 677.5, and that's about 26 feet away in there. So that's about a 1 to 5 slope.
so is there any way possible to, appease some of the concerns of the neighbors and reduce the top of foundation?
I think the key thing would be that if you drop the foundation down, which again, it is possible, but then you shift the house back. And again, that is something that they'd have to consider in that process. And the reason would be is that, to have the walkout as designed, it needs to be, this has to be higher than the elevation behind it. Right now, you have a basement at 668, the basement floor at 668.5. So you would be walking that 668 kind of runs along here. And it kind of gets lost in
What's existing? Isn't that 662? That's
662 comes in and then veers back.
isn't that
Yeah,
the same
so
thing?
it's this one right here.
So that's 6 feet higher.
Mhm.
So if they left it, more at the existing grade back there. It'd be something for their civil engineer to take a look at.
Mhm.
Chairman, I guess I'm sympathetic to the concept, and again, I don't know if it's he said, but if this was brought before us 3 or 4 weeks ago and there hasn't been discussion between them until, an attempt today, I think it's fair to say that having them a conversation maybe with staff present, just to see if there's other options. If it's in code, it's in code, but exploring other options seems reasonable to me. I'm not saying anything can be done, but
Right, go ahead, Carol.
I'm not sure that I understand what lowering the structure is going to do in the way you think of it. I'm just not sure what it is you would be accomplishing. So I was wondering if you could articulate that for me.
Well, I think the resident said, it reduced the height of the structure as one part. The other thing, you reduce, the slopes, as well.
So I'm still,
With the speed of the water,
I'm-
increased slope.
I'm still not sure what that does. I mean, it might, is it a design issue? The height of the house? Are you trying to lower it for stormwater reasons? And that's what I'm trying to,
I think
walk.
it's a little bit of both is what the, the resident was requesting. Or,
I don't know, that's what I don't have an understanding, so I'm
Sure,
just trying to.
just so I don't misconvey your thoughts.
Hi, testing. All right. Yeah, I do think it's a little bit of both. I mean, it's the fact that it's 12 foot off of our property line and effectively a 3-story house, since the walkout basement will be fully exposed within half of the house length due to the slope. It's a pretty imposing structure. So I think just any little bit, my sense of a foot was just, that seems to be what the current property is at about, so not give them another 1.5 feet to go up. I'm not trying to be overly burdensome. I'm trying to find a modest approach. I thought Mr. Freeman was very kind and nice, and I know there's going to be a good family coming in. So it was just trying to find a, middle ground, and he was very accommodating and saying that he would do the berm, which I do think that will, eliminate the risk of probably any water ever coming over. So it was more of a, hey, if we can do a little step grade approach. So it's both aesthetically and for the stormwater, but yeah, it was just trying to meet someone halfway and not put something that seems insurmountable ahead of everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so. I mean, I'm not a stormwater expert, but it seems to me that. Given the conditions here, lowering the house a little bit isn't gonna make a significant difference in the stormwater flow. So that that's what I was trying to understand. If it's for aesthetic reasons, just because you would be looking up, that could be a little fearful. I know the change alone is would be enough to scare me. But again, I'm not sure that we're talking about anything that would be lower or not lower enough to really make a difference. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, no, and
I-
nor do I. But Carlos, do you have any thoughts on that?
We can talk with the petitioner, what that foot would do or if there's any value in reduction of the top of foundation. And there, it becomes a matter of whether that's something that they would, a courtesy they would consider, because there are two things before the commission right now. There's a community design review, because this is not subject to site plan review, so you're not looking at the impact that the development as a whole has on the adjacent property, but you are looking at the aesthetics with the guidelines giving you the guidance of what you're reviewing, and that elevation complies with that spirit and intent. It's got articulation, it's got the roof mass and slopes in there. The real friction is that now you got a side yard up against the rear yard, and they are close, and it is going to be different. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I recognize both the two gentlemen are going to have a different backyard view than what was there before. So it becomes, and then what does the commission have within its realm, and that is the concept stormwater management review, which is also part of that process. I don't know whether that 1 foot does make a significant difference on how that stormwater would be managed. Most of the stormwater flow that's going to come from the house is going to go through a gutter system. So you're talking about what falls in that 12 feet and then any open areas within that 12 feet. And whether that channel or that swell is capable to handle that in there. So it's like two different components. I don't think that top of foundation is going to dictate how well that swell works in there. Out of a courtesy, if they can consider dropping it, whether it's 6 inches or 1 foot in there, it's still going to be from the perspective of your rear yard outward. Whether that foot was there or not, I'm not sure if it's going to make a significant difference.
I mean, it will look different.
Yeah, understood. Sir, go ahead if you had it.
I'm not trying to grade any economic
No.
hardship. I was throwing out a number.
And it's maybe something worth looking at,
Yeah,
you know.
I think the more important one would be the movement a foot or two so that we could put the berm starts on their property. And if I have to clear some stuff online, I'm fine with that. I think that's the more important issue.
Unfortunately,
And I really appreciate Mr. Freeman. We hadn't talked about the movement. We didn't talk about the berm, so I appreciate his understanding and willingness to get that. So, you know, I'm not trying to create a
Understood.
problem out of something that's clearly already.
understood. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I just don't think we're gonna be able to slide it because we have the 5 foot setback on the other side and they got the driveway right up against that. And if you start moving the house and leave the driveway, then the people can't turn into their, garages and things like that. It becomes really difficult. So, Carlos, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see shifting the house being an option. Without doing some major architectural work.
It would be, I don't want to say it's a narrow lot, it's because it's the same size as the lots that were there prior. And they're 100 feet wide, which is what is the minimum that's permitted by code in the SR district without a variation, because we have more narrow lots. And, you know, they're putting a sizable house on there and they're utilizing all, the full extent of the buildable area, which is their right to do so. And in this case, yeah, with this design, I can't lose any more on the driveway turnaround and I can't lose that 5 feet. So unless those give, and this design doesn't have any potential to slide east to west. In there.
And let me just ask one quick clarifying question. The existing contour lines, is that based on the proposed or the approved plat? Or
That would be set what's on the plat. Now, again, the plat didn't consider what the exact footprint and that there was going to be a pool and such. So there are some adjustments in there. The plat also doesn't, recognize that there's now a pile of dirt that was from the adjacent home that's been dug out. That you see
sitting
in some
on
of
top.
those pictures. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Is Mr. Freeman still on or is he?
No, I'm still here.
So, sir, did you have any comments related to some of those things that we were talking about, the change of elevation or change of?
I'm really in agreement with Carlos and the discussion on the aspect of lowering it a foot. I guess the engineer's setting it because he's setting it with the same grades with the house that's being built to the west of it. So, I mean, he's setting it to be at the same elevation and to make sure we got the water runoff on the front yard going to the street. And, I'm not an engineer, so that's why we let them be engineers and do what they do. But I firmly believe lowering it a foot is not going to affect any of your stormwater. You might see 12 inches of less of siding, but, and I can see where they're coming from on that, but personally, I would leave it up to the engineer on how it really needs to set with the house that's being built currently to the, west of it, with the driveway and all that. And I don't think we can correlate with Carlos on the aspect of moving the house, trying to move it back and over. It starts to affect a lot of other things. And I don't think those things affect stormwater.
Understood. Help me out. Is lot 7 been already?
yes. Mhm.
Approved? Okay.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to motion to approve the petition for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 570 Long Acres Lane. The presented memorandum from the Department of Planning and Development dated May 4th, 2023, subject to staff conditions noted therein.
My only request would be if we add a condition that he, speaks to his engineer to see if it would be possible. In relation with the other property, to reduce that,
To do what?
reduce the type of foundation.
Okay,
Can I add a condition to actually make sure they're speaking to the neighbor, maybe in staff presence, to look at other options? If possible, not saying anything can, because it's within code, but if they haven't connected in the many weeks,
Yeah,
that's my concern. Be a good neighbor in that regard.
I would agree. Carol, are you okay with this?
I'm okay with this.
Okay, good. Motion's been made, amended.
Just to note, in there because of the recordings, like Jennifer, when she goes back and takes a look at that, and you had noted in the first one, Commissioner Wagner made the motion, Commissioner Lewis seconded. Sometimes you'll follow it up, sometimes.
Yeah, so keep doing that, right?
Yes,
All right.
thank you.
Motion's been made by Karen Wagner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Wolf.
All right,
Carlos, you please call the vote.
yes. Commissioner Waller,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
Commissioner Drago.
Approved.
The motion passes unanimously 4-0. And Mr. Freeman, I'll coordinate with Mr. Heiss and Mr. Knoll to try to meet sometime next week.
Not a problem. Be happy to meet with them.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, we'll move on to new business. Carlos, I know you'll need some time, but I'll go ahead and introduce it. It's item A, $9,200 Boulevard, Suite 126, shops at Price Crossing, the wine merchant.
All right. Chairman, I'm going to have 3 special permits before you, so I'm going to quickly just go over the special permit process Ms. Doty put together for me here on the slide. And again, special permits are actual uses that are called out within the specific zoning district, but have additional conditions that are applied to them. So sometimes they're unique uses that, if they comply with certain other standards beyond above that of the basic underlying zoning ordinance, they may be compatible with the surroundings or the district within itself. A special permit is reviewed and by the commission, and the commission only forwards a recommendation to the council whether it should be authorized or not. The council considers the authorization through an ordinance. So they actually, each of these special permits actually have their own little ordinance that's written, that's codified in our code of ordinances. And in there, it will identify the location, the use that was authorized, and then any conditions that were necessary to mitigate a use that was placed in there. And the commission has a wide array of what they can consider in efforts to try to mitigate potential impacts to the site itself and its surroundings. You can control hours, you can control aesthetics and things that are above and beyond what you would normally control, in a home review or something like that in there. And then special permit uses, if they're not, following through on their conditions, the city does have the ability to pull a special permit to rescind it and take it back. That's part of the process in there. There is a whole process on how that is determined, so it's not used indiscriminately, but that is in there. The standards for a special permit is, again, it needs to be called out in the zoning district, needs to be consistent with the goals and objectives of our comprehensive plan. The parcel has to be suitable for the use. It should not alter the character of the surroundings, and efforts should be made to mitigate spillover effects. And then again, the city also reserves rights to impose any additional conditions. So this is going to apply to the next 3 petitions that I have before you. The first one is at the Shops at Price Crossing, $9,200 Boulevard, at the old Advantage Credit Union tenant space, which is on the far west end of the facility. The petitioner has it under lease, and under consideration is the wine merchant looking to relocate from Clayton to Olivet, which we'd welcome in there. Wine and spirit stores are considered special permit uses, and therefore they require the commission to forward a recommendation to the council. We have reviewed, and you have copies of their full analysis noting the number of employees, hours of operations, and the type of activities that take place on the site. We think that this would add to the surroundings, that it would help us in our vision on our comprehensive plan, along with our catalyst strategy. Then we also assess the site as a whole, given that they're asking for special permission, kind of special permit, are there any other things that would help us further our vision or comprehensive plan? And we did this similar with the property next door, but in this case, this site was built, as we had adopted our comprehensive plan. It has a majority, this site is set set within that vision of the comprehensive plan and chapter 428. No modifications are being proposed to the exterior, so therefore we're not requesting any additional conditions to the site grounds than what are already adopted in the standard. I'll note this site also has 2 ordinances that authorize special permits in there. One that said that the site can have 3 restaurants, which they do: the Jimmy John's, the Sugar Fire, and Fallon's, the three full service type of restaurants. And then of course the other eateries that may be in there. And then the second is that it authorized a bank or financial institution to utilize a drive-through. So the drive-through, which is this component you'll see here, hopefully my mouse can show on your screens, this area here, that will remain, but they're not authorized to use that drive-through in there. The only user that can use the drive-through is a bank or financial institution, unless they make a request to change that over time. They're not looking to utilize the old drive-through in any form or way. So outside of that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. We have the petitioner here along with the owner representative for the wine merchant, and I'll let it go to you, sir.
I don't have any questions, comments. Anybody else on the commission have any questions or comments? We're looking forward to having it come in. Yeah.
You want to introduce him real quick, Greg? Just that's okay, Chairman.
Absolutely.
Greg Yao at 6 Other Hill Lane, developer and owner of Price Crossing. So I'm here with Jason Main, who is the wine merchant. And I couldn't be more excited as an Olivet resident and the owner of the building to have them move into our fine city and occupy the former Vantage Credit Union. And no, there will not be any high velocity Bordeaux shooting through the drive-through tubes. Doesn't seem like the best use of physics. We're going to cap the tubes in the building. We're going to leave the structure attached because then it would make the building look weird if we tore it off. And I'm guessing that Jason and his wife may use it for their own personal parking spaces, which is totally fine by me. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jason.
Greetings. Thank you so much for having me. We're excited to be here. I actually have long connections with the city of Olivet myself. I went to Logos and I'm still deeply involved with their board. So I'm excited to be even closer to those fine folks as well. We've been in Clayton for over 30 years, but their redevelopment plans don't meet with our vision. And so we're looking for greener pastures, and Olivet seems like a really good fit for us. So we're very excited.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
Glad you were moving in. So,
Yeah,
thank you.
we're excited.
So are there any public comments related to this item? Seeing none in the audience, Carlos, is there any public comments online?
No, sir.
Okay. That being said, do I hear a motion?
Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I would like to motion to forward a recommendation to the city council to consider authorizing a special permit use for the operations of a beer, wine, and liquor store. It's NAICS 4453, not to exceed 7,000 square feet, to be known as the Wine Merchant, as presented before the commission and noted in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated June 1st, 2023, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded by Brian Lewis. Carlos, will you please call the vote?
Commissioner Wallach,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
Commissioner Jurgell.
Approved.
Motion passes 4-0. The next step would be that this item will go before the city council, and we anticipate the first reading would take place on June 27th. and a public hearing on July 11th. Yes, no, yes. I'm getting my dates because the 13th is the advisory committee. I think I told you the 11th. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to the air. Okay, we'll move on to item B, which is 1223 North Bryce Road, Auto Beauty Specialist.
All right, Chairman. Now, in this case, at 1223 North Price Road, we have an existing user, a property owner and operator at that site, Auto Beauty. They've been a part of all of it, I believe, since 2015, in there where they were approved as a special permit to operate their auto repair and maintenance facility at this site. As they've transitioned over the years, they're starting to focus a lot on electric cars, more specifically Teslas, and they needed some additional storage on the site. And what they're proposing here is a 30 by 40 square foot building to be located kind of the rear end of that building, but it's kind of hidden from the side corners in here. It is a metal steel framed warehouse. It would be solely for storage on that site facility. They have some items that are out in there, and then of course within the building that they would be relocating there. So it's not for occupancy and such. A couple of things that I'll note on this, since there is an existing special permit that authorized the current use on the site, the commission has the ability to consider two different types of motions. One would be to consider this just as an amendment and part of the actual uses is continuing on, which is what staff would recommend if the commission considers acting on this. The second is to reauthorize a whole new special permit, but you're essentially saying for the same type of use, but with the expanded building improvements, which I think somewhat redundant, and would urge the commission not to consider, but that's well within your part. Then that would have to go to council. And I do have a representative of the petitioner here. You do have plans of the building. It's a very simple building for storage. And then the information regarding the exterior finish is important because that's where a majority of what we do in that process. So I do want to go over that real quickly here just to make sure. And I think I just closed my presentation. Bear with me 1 second, Chairman.
No worries. I don't see the.
Yeah, I have it. Okay, so here's an elevation of the existing building. And you can see they have some seam metal that's along this elevation here. I don't think getting any closer is going to show you in there. Now, within your plan set, I did ask for a more specific to what that frame or where that exterior finish would be. So you see it's a metal panel system, not corrugated in any way like the front exterior is in there. And it would essentially be a similar type of building that looks like this, but on the exterior.
What's the building going to store?
I will let the petitioner answer that. I know there's been discussions within my staff and the fire marshal. But I think it's more, the additional parts and things as they're transitioning to electric vehicles.
This looks like a paint booth.
This is a paint booth within the building itself, but the finish of
It's
the
going to
exterior
be
is going to be similar to that panel system.
Understood. Understood. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anybody have any questions or comments for Carlos? Carol?
Carlos, when I was looking at the site plan, it looks to me like this building would be pretty much hidden from view because there's the
Mhm.
easement behind the building and there's a parking lot on the other side, and the building itself sits at an angle. So it's not something that most people just coming past the building or going into it through the front or even ever going to see.
Correct. And we were cognizant of that, and I think they took that into consideration as they looked at other opportunities within the site grounds in there. But to that extent, similar to what we just had in the petition a while ago, they did approach the Murphy Group because the Murphy building is kind of situated facing the back of their property. So they did reach out to them and had a discussion. in there. I wouldn't say, I'll let the petitioner address that, but there was no opposition. And then we also did our notifications in the process.
Good. Okay. I think it's
Right.
time to hear from the petitioner.
Nick, I'm going to transfer you over as a panelist, and if you can turn on your microphone and video, it'd be greatly appreciated. There we go. All right.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, this is Nick Evola, 1223 North Price Road. Just want to confirm some of the questions. The storage area is primarily used for what we call parts carts. They're rolling carts that have parts from so it's collision repair. We're fixing cars. We have all the parts that we take off of the vehicles that we need to keep when we reassemble them later on in the process. And that's what the purpose of these parts carts are. So it's very simple. Like Carlos said, no occupancy. We have 9 technicians, and the width of this building is 46 feet. So like I said, it's extremely simple. We're dividing that 46 feet by 9. That gives you a little bit over 5 feet of a lane that we're going to give each technician to park these parts carts for their vehicles that are on their list of jobs to take care of. The purpose of this storage area is to free up the room from our existing building to focus on a lot of the proprietary equipment and everything we're getting for the electric and our business model change and going toward electric vehicles that is happening in the existing building. It's just freeing up the room from that area.
Makes sense. Are you going to have to, enter and exit that building from the outside, or will it be connected to the building from the interior?
It will not be connected, so it will be separated. We've done all the fire code and all that to make sure that where it is placed with the existing building that we meet fire code, and we're still able to have enough distance from the Murphy lot where we meet the Murphy lot for the fire truck or fire department to be able to go through and all that good stuff. So
Good. Carlos, did the fire department have any issues with this?
No, not under this scenario. They work closely with Fire Marshal Fain, along with our senior building inspector Kurtz. And this is one of these things, not to prolong the discussion, but it was interesting in terms of what they looked at trying to do to add the additional storage space, finding out that through the building code, actually doing an addition opened up a whole bunch of other issues regarding firewalls, the sprinkler system, fire suppression, and all that the most reasonable and economic means for the purposes of what they're doing was to have it detached in there. Then became the question is how much is detached, and I think the ultimate compromise was the 2 feet in there before we started going into another bunch of code issues.
Understood. And the pathway for these carts, I would assume, would be in that northwest corner, going right into the storage.
yes, there's a huge 12 by 12 garage door, oversized garage door that opens up to that back lot, and it would just be a straight shot from the pavement.
And you're not looking to store any parts and stuff outside, I assume?
No parts outside. No, we do have a large aluminum bin that is, once it's full, we have a recycling service come and take it, but that's within a bin, so it's not just sitting outside.
Understood. Good. Anybody on the commission have any specific questions? No? Sir, did you have anything else? I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just trying to keep things moving.
Nope, I don't have anything else. Pretty cut and dry, pretty straightforward, just simply a storage building.
Good. Go ahead, Missy.
Nick, this is Missy. How are you doing? Nick,
Good.
are you converting totally to an electronic? Are you still going to be dealing with repairs of vehicles that are not electric vehicles?
We will be doing both. So we're not going away from traditional vehicles by any means. That's still primarily our workload. But we as Carlos mentioned, we have Tesla now, and we are currently looking at two other manufacturers, Rivian and Lucid. And it is definitely something that we're pushing forward, trying to be ahead of the game as far as the collision industry, ahead of the game, and definitely we like to consider ourselves one of the strongest collision repair shops in the state of Missouri. So we have a lot of certifications and accolades to kind of back that up.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience have any questions or comments related to this agenda item? Seeing none, Carlos, can you check online?
There are none, sir.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I'd like to make a motion, and I'd like to do this as an amendment to the existing special permit. Does
Yeah.
that seem reasonable to all of you? I'd like to motion to consider the petition for a 1,380 square foot storage addition at the property addressed as 1223 North Price Road as an amendment to the existing special permit use authorized under ordinance number 2565 to auto beauty specialists and approved for the site plan, community design, and concept stormwater management plan reviews as prepared before the commission and noted in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Development dated June 1, 2023, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded by Sam Wallach. He beat you. Just by here. Carlos, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Wallach,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
Commissioner Dragell,
Approved.
and the motion approves unanimously as an amendment, and therefore the next process is for the application of the building permits to proceed. So Nick, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm gonna move you.
Thank
back.
you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll move on to item C, 1220 North Price Road, the Paddle and Pickleball Club.
Chairman, I'm going to take you across the street from 1223 to an existing industrial warehouse building that we have at 1220 North Price Road. You may recall this back about a year ago. It was being considered for a cultivation facility on the site grounds. The petitioner pulled the permit. In there, the property got acquired by Bamboo Equity, which uses Intelica CRE as part of their management process or so. And eventually the entire 150,000 square feet of the warehouse was vacated. They've done some exterior improvements to the property since then, and they're getting ready for reuse in there. And one of the considerations that came in, this property, which is right here just north of the city's public works yards and across from Auto Beauty Specialists, was added on over time. So you have a primary area here on the south side, and then you have this area here on the north side. And the building kind of has 3 to 4 different unique spaces. There's the north side, and then this south end here has can be is kind of carved up into 3 different areas, and we've had different tenants in the past in there. There's also a basement level to this north part of the building. They have the petitioner has somebody that's seeking to occupy this north level for the operation of a private recreational club that does paddle and pickleball. In there, they're looking at a St. Louis location. They like the site here, and you have copies of your plans that show both the site grounds, the area that they would lease, which is a little less than 42,000 square feet, how they would design that interior, the number of courts. They're not asking to utilize the basement area in this, and that could be a future leasable area of a different use in there. And then again, that's that breakup of the building. But I'm going to go back here. It would be a private for-profit club. In there, you have a description of the business and the business hours that would be proposed, and a little bit of the information of the business model as a whole. In there, we have a representative here with Intelica CRE that can address any questions in there. And I'll note in terms of the review, taking a look at that, it was a unique use in there, but recreational uses are authorized within our light industrial district. I think it's a good reuse of the site, something different, something not anticipated. The only issue that would come up in that process would be parking, because this initial building was kind of designed as a warehouse, which has a minimal type of parking load to it. So we did take a look, how a use like this would impact the reuse of the rest of the building in there, and it's pretty reasonable. I think our parking requirements for warehouses are pretty high, and we haven't touched those in a long time. We probably need to reevaluate those, but they have approximately about 121 defined stalls on the site. They can have a lot more depending on how the site is laid out. The surface areas of the site are laid out in there, because this was a traditional warehouse type of user, but if we go into more entertainment or service type of businesses, a lot of those dock doors probably won't be operable, and you won't need the big maneuvering areas that were necessary for some of those. So at least, again, visibly there is at least 121 stalls on the site. The current user or the proposed user would need 26 by code in there, and we ran different numbers in there. So of the 121 stalls, all they need is 26, so they would be okay. But we have to be cognizant of what about the rest of the building, and how is that going to impact the viability of the building. And of course, I'm sure the petitioner is just as concerned too. So we did run the calculations using the maximums that would be in there, and we came up that if everything was used to its maximum level, meaning that there was no changes like the change that we just saw, converting part of a warehouse to pickleball courts, at full capacity, the site would need 163 stalls. Again, there's 121 defined. They could probably stripe up a whole lot more in there. But the key thing is that odds are, this building may not be used as a traditional warehouse. And again, our standards for parking for a traditional warehouse are pretty high and probably need to be revised. We also probably should give some consideration to when you have a mixture of uses that this building will probably essentially have, that things kind of overlap or overlay, and things that we need to try to address by code. However, before us right now is just this specific use. This may pose an issue down the road, but hopefully we'll have those either amended, readdressed, or find that the use complies in the end. So I just did want to bring that to your attention because I thought it was important in there.
Carol, go ahead.
Yes, Carlos, on the subject of parking, the parking field seems to be mostly associated with the sections of the building that are not going to be used by the paddleball.
Correct. The field
So-
that they've been allocated right now is this field here, which is right in this area here. So you have that green area, and that's where the court areas would be.
Okay,
If they restripe here, they can get, if depending on who their final users are here, they can probably pick up a whole bunch of sites, additional stalls in that. Right now, it's kind of laid out for the traditional warehouse drop on,
okay,
pickup
so,
type stuff.
so they'd have the lot near the curb, and then there'd be a large green space in between, okay.
The one thing that I can't do that I wish it could is, green space is now sacred, especially in their conversion of that green space into additional parking, which I think would be beneficial. You see it as it's utilized over here. However, that then may trigger MSD requiring some type of on-site detention in there that might make viability or reuse pretty difficult.
Carlos, what's the building made of? Is it concrete or is it metal?
I believe it's a concrete block.
It's masonry.
Measure, good, okay. I was just concerned about noise.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, we did talk about that.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'm
Sorry.
curious, they mentioned a bar as well. Is it from a zoning perspective? like they're serving, is that in the area zoned for that to allow?
They
for
would
that?
need, yeah, I mean, it's an accessory to the primary use, so therefore it would be permitted. And there may not be a bar, like I can just go walk in there and.
Yeah, you need to be a
have-
member.
But if I'm a member, it would be, one of the amenities that I would have on site, so that's not different like from a.
So it's
an
not
apartment
treated like a
complex.
restaurant in that. regard.
Correct. Mhm. It
Interesting.
would be for members only.
They need a liquor license.
They
but
would need
yeah,
to apply
but
for a liquor
but they're
license.
not
Mhm.
under the same conditions of a Phelan's or something. like that would be. Okay.
And the special permit would recognize that or note it in the site plan as they've illustrated. And
Very
there,
exciting new use for this.
I think it's, every once in a while you get these, wow, never thought of that, and we can make it work.
Yeah,
And we had a good partner in this process, so.
yeah. Should we bring on the petitioner and let him
Yes.
introduce himself?
Right. Doc?
Hi, everyone. I'm Drew Clary. I'm with Intellica Commercial Real Estate. I'm here on behalf of them and Bamboo Equity Partners as well, landlord side of the building. Is there a petitioner from the tenant side online?
No, there's nobody on.
Okay, just
on the
making sure.
attendees, so, yeah.
If you can maybe state your address and if you're related to the building,
Residential address or
Business.
business.
11701 Borman Drive, Maryland Heights, or St. Louis, Missouri, 63146.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So I can do my best to answer any questions you might have. I'm a little more familiar with the building than the pickleball concept, but at least on behalf of the landlord, I think it's a great use for the site. We're excited about it. We think it's a great use for all of that. It's an industrial building. It's a warehouse. It's in the industrial zone, the heaviest industrial zoned area of all of that. I think it's a great reuse, and it's a the fastest growing sport right now in the United States. So we're excited.
Does this company have other facilities, other parts of the area or country or?
So their business plan has St. Louis being the first.
Mhm.
So I believe there's a couple professional players on the ownership team, along with some local St. Louis investors. And so St. Louis is their first location. I believe they want to go to Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Atlanta, some other ones, but they chose St. Louis first. So this is their first location. That being said, there are indoor pickleball and paddle courts opening in other cities. They're trying to be, kind of corner the Midwest market.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
Very nice. I don't have any specific questions. Does anybody on the commission have any specific questions or comments? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Carlos.
Again, in their packet of information, they did provide a pretty good,
I glanced through that.
Okay,
Yeah.
just to make sure.
It was very interesting. Anybody in the general audience have any questions or comments on this agenda item? Seeing none, Carlos?
It actually might be worth mentioning that there are pickleball courts planned at, I forget which park, but one of our parks. And it may be a nice complementary use of or tournament play type of thing.
Yes,
I'm hoping.
especially to practice in the off season. Right. Yeah. Carlos, anybody online?
No, that was
Okay,
everybody.
sorry I didn't mean to cut you. off.
No problem. I wasn't aware of the question. So there's nobody else outside of us now online.
Okay.
We did do our standard notifications in there. We usually send out notices to properties within 300 feet. In this case, we went ahead and just went all the way to the west side of Hilltop in many cases. So we kind of went a little further than that. I did get one call in there that was in support. They thought that was a great use coming in there. So
Very good.
I'll note that.
Okay, do I hear a proposed motion?
Sorry.
Carol, go ahead.
Question for,
Oh, sorry.
I want to clarify. Carlos, if the paddle and pickle club is highly successful and wants to use more sections of the building, would they be required to come back to amend their special permit to add those on?
It would be something they'd have to come back to the commission. The commission would consider again whether. I looked at it this as various ways. I thought about issuing a large special permit that would be encompassing and help expedite any future tenant use on that site, but it got a little bit difficult not knowing the specific uses. So it is set to this footprint. They can petition the commission to come back and come back and say, you know, we want to expand the footprint, and it would be up to the commission to determine whether it, similar to what we just did with Auto Beauty, of whether it would be something that would have to go back to the council or not. If you think about it, all the council would be considering is whether they would permit the recreational use, which they already authorized. So what's it seems somewhat redundant. And again, that's, you know, I think whoever's sitting in this chair in the future would probably indicate that the commission has the authority to authorize it as an amendment. So.
It's an exciting use and glad where it came. Increased traffic, because we're now talking 300 people a day they talked about, or 150, I forget what the number is. I'm just curious, does it eventually go to please to talk through? Does it need to change anything in the road?
Well, it's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked on that, because we do a multi-department review on these to make sure everybody's informed in the process, and then looking at the numbers. This, like many other streets, we know we have traffic management issues on Price Road. That being said, in this case, we've initiated a process and we've been granted funds from the Missouri Department of Transportation to expand the north side of the intersection of Price Road and Olive. So right now, if you're coming from the industrial park and going on to Olive, you get to a point where you have a left turn to go east to I-170, and then a second lane that you can do a left, go straight, and go right. And if you're going right and you're behind someone that's going left, you're going to wait a couple of cycles before you can get through, and that's unfortunate. We've been awarded a grant to expand and increase an additional lane, which would provide a dedicated right, which should reduce a lot of that backup occurrence in there. In addition to that, and this is going back to our Olive Boulevard master plan and the comprehensive plan, these are things that have all been set. We're finally just getting to the shovel aspect of it. On the intersection of Dillman Industrial Drive and Olive, so where the US Bank and Alvey or Integrated sit, you have the same situation. You have a 2-lane road that intersects with Olive. One lane is to go in and one lane is to take a left, go straight, or go right in there. We're also expanding that to put a dedicated right. So again, so if you're turning left, if you're going right, you don't have to sit behind someone turning left. So we're increasing the capacities of both those intersections that service Price Road, using the majority of federal funds to do that. At the process, I think the schedule is probably in a year or two to start digging in there. Now, on the other end, that means we're going to lose a building, and that's going to be the building, the CBD building at the corner of Price and Olive, but I don't see that being, I'm sure they can relocate or so, but that will be part of the purchase in an effort to expand. So it goes back to, I appreciate you asking that question, because we are working on there. We have over 3,500 employees that work in that industrial park area, and we recognize, you know, traffic's an issue at certain times.
And I think can you get north of Price? If you continue up north, where does it end?
It ends right in all of that. It cul-de-sacs.
So there's you can't get to Page, which I could see a lot of people coming to this from outside of all of that, of course, like Clayton or north or south. And so they're getting off 170, they're going to go back to 170. So that left-hand turn is going to get a lot more use out of Price. So I'm glad to hear.
There's some way to get through the parking lot to get back to Dillman, right?
You can get to Dillman Road on the western end.
Is it Alice or what's the?
No, Alice will get you back to Hilltop and then back to Olive, but you can continue on Dillman Industrial Drive and head
Not that it matters. I'm glad to hear that's already been thought through. I think that will help quite a bit, because those intersections are just going to get busier and busier.
Yeah. And I'll note it too. Again, I want to stress given the foresight of the commission through the last comprehensive plan and the Olive Boulevard master plan, these are the results of, the work you guys put together. Here's Price Road, and it goes in and then it terminates here.
not to speak to the commission, the planning zoning, but maybe they can put a bike landing if they're gonna build a right-hand lane, thinking through our last.
Well-
Like the bike lane on Price.
Well, and there will be right along, you see this little gray line here? That is the future trail of the
Yeah,
GRG
great. Okay.
extension. And then it'll kind of cut across here and connect to Indian Metals.
I see Human Industrial back.
Mhm.
there.
So,
Okay,
Good,
thank
good.
you.
All right, seeing no further discussion, do I hear a motion? Go ahead, Carol. Oh, we already did it, didn't we?
no,
No, you didn't. Okay.
no
sorry.
motion yet.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to motion to forward a recommendation to city council to consider authorizing a special permit use for the Paddle and Pickle Club to operate a 41,225 square foot private membership club that features indoor paddle and pickleball courts, clubhouse, bar, and pro shop at the property grounds addressed as 1220 North Price Road as presented before the commission and noted in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated June 1st, 2023, subject to staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded by Sam Wall. Carlos, you please call the vote.
Commissioner Waller,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
Commissioner Trio.
Approved.
The motion passes 4-0. And again, we'll have this item will now go to the city council. And that will be scheduled for their first reading on the June 27th meeting. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to item D, which is 10401 F Bauer Boulevard, RP Exotics LLC.
Okay, Chairman, I'm going to ask that item be deferred.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, sir.
So we'll then move on to item E, which is the text amendment, chapter 445, urban agriculture regarding bamboo.
And Chairman, we had a brief discussion on this at our last meeting, and the council has requested the commission forward a recommendation removing the subparagraph B of section 445-080 in there regarding bamboo. And what that section is specifically about is it provides a procedure for a neighboring property to bring forward to the city issues with bamboo growth. And then it also kind of delegates that neighboring property owner kind of delegates some of the resolution to the process to a neighboring property owner. And I think that's where we kind of had an issue with the enforcement of this process. And it's one of our more unique ordinances in which, again, it's not about a property to property type of issue, because any neighbor can bring forward into the process, but the final resolution, the neighboring property has a lot of authority in that process. So that has posed a concern to the council and they're looking to remove the segment regarding the application of pre-existing bamboo. A couple of things that I'll note. One is, again, it would still be prohibited by code to plant bamboo. We do have an inventory of properties that have existing bamboo on their site grounds. Any future ones would be evaluated based on that list of properties that we have, and whether that's new growth and all that. And then secondly, the notice and abatement authority of the city would still be maintained in that process. But what it changes is that the objection of a neighbor on the bamboo intrusion would be removed from that segment of the code. So I hope that kind of answers some of the questions in that we went over it very quickly at our last meeting in there, and be glad to answer any specific questions. And also, if the commission would want to consider a discussion with the city attorney on this, we can also bring them in at our next meeting.
I have a question, Carlos. It seems that if we don't really, if we're saying we don't wanna, we're still saying, no, you can't plant bamboo and all of that. So if we only eliminate the section where, or maybe if we look at B number 2 and delete that, is that sufficient to accomplish what we're trying to do here?
Well, I think that's part of it, but it's really number 3. That the neighboring property owner, again, it's giving them some say in what the finality of that process would be, whether it's sufficient or not. It's delegating to them the authority of making that final decision.
On the language in B here. It says if any bamboo intrudes into an area restricted by section 445-080B, but then B above is being deleted. Where is the language that identifies what area is being restricted?
What areas being,
Referencing B, which doesn't exist anymore.
And I get that it's re-lettering
yeah, it would be correct.
B, but it says any bamboo intrudes into an area restricted by section B. Does it list in here what those areas are?
Yeah, and that section, yes, and within the code there is, and what that does at that 445.080B, the pre-existing section. This notice and abatement order applies to the remaining part of the urban agricultural ordinance in here. So yeah, that would be modified to remove that reference, but it's still kept in because it's also addresses the other issues that you could have within that 445. Sorry, just jumping all over the place there.
I guess maybe I'm confused too, in that I guess it looks like it's referencing 445.080B, and I thought what we're changing is 445.080.
It may be that
We're
B and C
striking
are
out.
going hand in hand. If you take a look at your report, I think I got
the revised language here, but I think if we're striking all of B is what I'm hearing you say, Sam, right? Like there's nothing it's
Yeah.
referencing anymore.
I just want to make
Yeah.
sure it talks about the areas that are being restricted. I want to make sure it's
Yeah.
captured somewhere in here what those areas are. Because under the existing language, you have it written in there in B that's being deleted because it's being deleted.
Mhm.
I just want to be sure that
Carry that over
we're
into C.
capturing what areas are actually being restricted.
Were those urban agricultural sites that we had mapped?
yes.
But it doesn't even show that in B. If bamboo intrudes into an area restricted by, 445.080B, but I don't see any things in B that describe that.
The area restricted would be that on the adjacent owner and the public right of way. Is what that reference was to be.
Okay.
And it may be that the final language would be the removal of both B and C and just indicating that, except for pre-existing bamboo, you're not, the city prohibits bamboo being planted. Okay.
So what happens with pre-existing bamboo though? If all of a sudden we see, there's a neighbor that we don't know about that has pre-existing bamboo.
That is something we'll have to try to mitigate in there for the most part, or what we've done in there is we tried to do an inventory of existing parcels. Some of it visually, some of it through aerial mapping. In there, and that's probably what we would reference to see if it was there at that time or not. Majority of the time is we get a call from a neighbor saying something, they're planting bamboo.
No, I get that,
Mhm.
but right now, if we take out this whole section, we don't have anything in there that talks about pre-existing.
Pre-existing,
bamboo,
that is correct.
That
We would
they
just be
would-
prohibiting any new.
Any new, so, I mean, is it worthwhile to at least state some best practices, that the neighbor needs to contain it.
Yeah.
But not get the city involved.
It is something we can take a look into.
Just a thought,
I think it's a valuable one.
but I think it'd be good to have the city attorney, kind of just, discuss this. I think it'd make us all feel a little bit more comfortable.
I'd agree.
How many people actually registered? I'm just curious.
I think we got probably 5 registrants on the bamboo that first year.
Okay. And that's similar. I remember we did that with the chickens and things like that too.
Likewise,
It's one of
yeah.
those like, we're asking how many people know about it. If they know about it, but they take the time to do it, what's in it for them? But, and I understand the city is not value added to play bamboo cop. And that's not fun, but I think it's figuring out putting at least a guideline that if it became a civil matter, they can reference the city's code and deal with it then themselves. Is I think what we're saying, right?
Yes,
We're not involved, but
right.
breaking.
It's violating the city code.
Yeah.
But I think it gets really tricky, with it, if it's already spread.
Mhm.
And then if it's already spread, does that mean that the new neighbor now has to contain it or address it themselves?
Yeah.
Do you see where I'm going? So I don't know. This is a tricky issue and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Okay. Go ahead, Karen.
So I've been looking into the process of solarization. And I don't know if you know what that is, but
No.
there's
what is
these. You put these strips down that are, it's like they're metallic looking. Okay? And you leave them on the ground, covering up your weeds, say, for a year. And take it off and then everything underneath is dead. It prohibits growth underneath it. So I'm wondering if we have these places of existing bamboo, if we thought about some sort of requirement that they would need to solarize near the edge of their property or around stand of bamboo so it doesn't spread.
I mean, I
That
think
would
that's where,
solve a lot of the issues, I would think.
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's something worth taking a look into. In my professional view, the ordinance was kind of championed through the council in there, and we got ourselves in something beyond our expertise. In there.
Oh,
That-
you won't get any
That may
comments from
be
me
a
about
good
that.
management practice and one that could be laid out in there along with others. But I think the follow-up or on the enforcement, I think through code enforcement or building inspector are not the ideal individuals to try to address that.
Is it because there's so many, there's not a set way to do it? Or it's a little more nebulous?
I think, not to pass it on to another department, but a horticulturalist probably could do a lot better job trying to oversee that than a building inspector could.
Yeah.
In there, but we don't have that staff capacity to place it on them. We tried to take on something more than what we actually knew or understood. We understand bamboo a lot better now than we did before. And ultimately what this does is reverts back to, again, we've always discouraged bamboo. Now we prohibited bamboo, but when we've had issues regarding the spread of bamboo, there were civil matters. And in there, but we never pursued it as a nuisance type of issue. Yeah, in terms of us trying to resolve it.
Understood.
So
Okay, any further discussion with the commission members? Any public comments?
Gregory Evans, 676 North Price Road. I've had pre-existing bamboo in my yard for 25 years. I learned a lot about what people don't understand about how to arrest the spread of bamboo. I learned a lot myself in having to deal with it. And I think the ordinance was passed hastily. Not a lot of understanding was available or was taken on by the city council before they did pass the ordinance. I spent a lot of time with horticulturists trying to set up a method of containing my bamboo. I've learned a lot. I've done a much better job now than I did before. But the problem with the ordinance was that the person who objected as a neighbor to you having bamboo had no skin in the game. They had made no effort they didn't require that those people make any effort financially or physically to try and arrest the spread into their property. So I had to pay $5,000 to a company to come out and remove the bamboo along one side of my property. The city actually contracted with that company, and we paid the city after they paid the contractor. The neighbors did nothing. They made no effort during this period of time that we had bamboo growing in that part of our yard, maybe 8 years, to ever try and stop that spread. And I now know much better about how to control that. I think you're right about having a horticulturist come and educate people that have pre-existing bamboo, and that would be a great thing. I know I can just cut off the top of my head, I can think of 8 properties that I just see driving around that have bamboo. So not everybody registers it, of course, because it's a grass, and it was something that some people, I think my neighbors may have been one or two that objected to the bamboo because for some reason they didn't like it. I think it's very calming and it gives my yard a privacy that I desperately need because the surrounding homes tower over my house so much that I have no privacy whatsoever without that tall grass barrier. So that's why it was originally planted, because it gave us the privacy in our yard from the intrusion of the neighbors. So my recommendation here, I guess, is that there does need to be some method of keeping that bamboo from spreading into areas where there's a right of way and that sort of thing, because it is a problem, I imagine, for utility companies and things like that. So for having some way to organize the ordinance that it's not so punitive as it is voluntary. And I think most people who have that bamboo find it very pleasing and would be more than willing to try and maintain the right of ways and the easements and that sort of thing from that material. You can actually pretty much isolate the bamboo, but it's a lot of work. I'll have to say, as are honeysuckle. That's a lot of work, and everybody has honeysuckle. So, we're trying to establish a legal precedent on something that's really, really difficult to say. I have poison ivy in my yard. I don't know where it came from, probably my neighbors, or it could be me or whatever. So I'm constantly dealing with poison ivy too. I mean, that's living things. My neighbors have a gumball tree. I have, hundreds of gumballs in my yard that are constantly annoying. I'm stepping on them. So I don't know that we can establish a policy that says this is particularly offensive to some people and not to others, so that the people it's offensive to shouldn't have more rights than the people who find it calming. That's just, what I've learned in this process.
I gave you some extra time. Usually we limit these to
Okay.
3 minutes, but I wanted to give you some extra time to go through that. But is the bamboo that you have on your yard now contained?
It is very contained. I mean, I do have an issue trying to maintain the area that was just recently dug up. I'm being very careful about that because I want to be a good neighbor. I'm not trying to do that. And I have made an application for a variance for a taller fence, and I'd be willing to take the bamboo down if that's, passed, if I'm given that variance. So, I like the bamboo. I like its calming nature, and for the most part, it's pretty contained in all my yard. No other neighbors complain about it. So I guess that's.
Is it spreading on any of your other neighbors' yards?
No, they haven't said anything about that. So
Okay.
I learned from the horticulturalist how to deal with it, of how to poison it and to stop its spread and that sort of thing. So I did learn a lot from this ordinance. I would like to thank the city for that. But I think it was a little unfair that the person who had that pre-existing bamboo, which was fine years ago, all of a sudden then was given this huge bill to try and arrest its spread, even in your yard. So that's all.
Okay,
All
thank
right?
you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Carlos, I'm seeing no other members of the audience. Is there any one online?
No one online, sir.
Okay. Any further discussion, or should we wait until we can maybe talk to the city attorney and, go ahead.
I clearly say, wait till you talk to city attorney. I have Mayor Pro Tem meeting tomorrow with the interim city manager. And this will be a brief conversation with regards to getting Paul and you guys scheduled for the conversations you need to have to feel comfortable to move forward.
Yeah, and Carlos, I remember I saw something that Ladue was doing something like this. I was curious if they had any similar, issues with neighbors.
Not that I'm aware of. I didn't reach out to find out or so, but I can see I'm sure there's a cohort.
And just see if
in there
there's
that
any
inquire of why.
ways that they've structured their, just because it's new, maybe we're further ahead than them. But you never know. So.
Because this may be a question for the city attorney, but say that we do strike this section B here, and then a neighbor calls up the city of Olivet and says bamboo is intruding on my property. Wouldn't we still have an obligation to go out and verify if that's true and do the same thing?
We would, I mean, we would assess it and then make a determination to the degree of it being a nuisance in there, and in there, and it goes.
I guess my point is that it seems to me all this really is doing is removing the obligation to register. Which, if that's what we're trying to accomplish, like, that's fine with me, I guess. But I don't know how big that change this really is outside of that.
That's an interesting point.
Mhm.
I wasn't looking at that. That's,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the problem remains whether or not we say it explicitly or not. If we have an existing yard that was bamboos intruding, we still have to deal with it somehow.
It'd be hard to say, well,
Right.
we've had somebody call and tell us that it exists, that we can.
We can't just
Turned
ignore
our
it. Yeah, I
blind
mean,
eye to
I
that.
guess
So,
that's.
Anyway, happy to talk more about it with the city attorney, but I'm wondering.
Perhaps we need an alternative procedure or something, there's
it's
something in
possible.
there that to deal with that issue, because it can't just ignore it.
Do we have any local horticulturists?
We do on the park staff in there, but their scope of expertise is somewhat different and we don't utilize them as an inspector or so, but it's something we can have a discussion about.
Yeah, she might have some other advice or thoughts, best practices, things like that.
Well, and in the best practice is not to plant it. Again, bamboo is, it doesn't just grow like poison ivy or honeysuckle. Bamboo's intentional. You physically do it. It doesn't just pop out of the ground one day in there. And if you're gonna do it, you have to be knowledgeable of what you're doing. It's not anything I have a thorough understanding on, and therefore I wouldn't plant it because there's, what I've heard or learned is that there are a lot of issues on how to control that, in there, and what might start small and pretty can get out of hand quickly. This is what we found.
But there's a lot of people that don't know that.
Correct, and that's where, I mean, the ordinance would then again state, don't plant it, you can't plant it in there, but when it gets to those that are existing right now and how many are, we're not actively involved in many. And we know a lot, everybody knows a lot of sites that have bamboo, Bon Air and Old Bonham. I'm sure everybody passes that every time. And, if you look at the sidewalk and you look at the grass area between the sidewalk and the curb, you don't see anything, but they got very tall, dense bamboo patch on their property, and they manage it well. They've done what's been necessary, and that's been there as far as well over 20 years, in there, and that's the thing. Most of, it became an issue because we made it an issue. And it's not necessarily that we were not promoting the planting of bamboo. It's a process that we adopted in there that's kind of become an issue for the city in terms of how we're going to handle or mitigate complaints between neighbors on that.
That seems to be the biggest issue.
Mhm.
Okay.
In there, and we've kind of delegated, I think, some of that, that the neighbor has, not to say it in a bad way, and there's really no way around it, but there is no, you can't put a closure into the process if an adjacent property isn't satisfied with the result, and they have the right and ability to have that concern in such, but that ordinance is vague enough that it makes closure difficult.
You raised a lot of interesting questions. I'm beginning to rethink this a lot. Because just eliminating the language in the ordinance isn't gonna eliminate the problem. And how we define the city's response should a neighbor complain. And we need to think about that. I mean, do we need to say something about that?
I think I'd like to hear from the city attorney, maybe more directly about what actually is the problem we're trying to address here. Is the real problem that we're trying to stay out of private disputes between neighbors? That the city doesn't have the authority or isn't, it's not appropriate for the city to be involved in those disputes? Okay, if that's the issue, then that might be outside the scope of this commission, or there might be a different way to
Or doesn't have
approach that.
the expertise.
Right,
You know.
right,
To help be a mediator, you
Right.
know, with this.
right. So,
Yeah. I would love to get a horticulturist, you know, who knows about this. If they'd be willing to, you know, discuss it as well.
Well, but there's two scopes of it, and I think again, kind of, Mr. Wallach, correct me if I'm wrong. Because yes, we can have a speaker come in before you to talk about bamboo and best practices. Whether it's the city representative or someone in there, and then look at what capacities we have within staff to be able to manage or oversee some of those in there. Then there's the second component, the way this ordinance is drafted and that enforcement procedure. And I think, you know, again, you know, based on experience, you know, the finding closure in a dispute became very difficult the way this is currently written. And maybe it was applied wrong, I'm not sure, but I think it's something we need to take a look at.
Could you somehow, instead of having the city be the one that closes it out, you know, have a horticulturist come out and indicate whether it's been addressed or mitigated properly?
Then what's the next step? If they say it's not, then I think the city's involved, you know, we're trying to get out of that.
Well, then it's.
You know, and maybe.
I agree, but I'm just, this doesn't happen very often.
Mhm.
But it does put the city in a situation that they don't have any expertise on.
Agreed, but I think like any, there's probably 50 notions we could go into besides bamboo and other things that they're not experts in, so. Yeah, I think I get the sense, and we can talk to the lawyer, but that their city doesn't want to be the enforcer of this, so it's, you know, somebody could get their own horticulturist, they could, you know, if it becomes a civil matter.
Yeah.
Like noise is a tough one, sound, smell is a tough one, we've gone through these things, right? Like, how do you quantify, how do you say it's bad, how does, if you're out there and it doesn't smell or you don't hear the sound?
Or you may have a poor sense of smell.
And there's some unique things on that bamboo, I mean, because that grows outward, I mean, it grows underground vertically. And horizontally. And the thing about it is that, you know, it takes a minimum 5-year period before you fully can kill everything that already has extended, you know, outward. And that might be what the difficult part is, because again, what can be done through this ordinance and mitigated or required to be mitigated, you know, 6 months later can start reappearing. It is really, you know, I never understood it, but in no way would I ever want the responsibility of bamboo. I'd rather have another kid. Yeah, but bamboo is it is pretty eye-opening. Yeah. And I think again, you know, and maybe the ordinance needed to be a little bit more broader to say, you know, that there's a reassessment every other year, you know, because this stuff continues on, it's. And then whose responsibility is it to mitigate what grew further out in there over time? And it led to a whole lot of questions.
Yeah.
So, and it's unfair, both for the person that planted it and for the person that has to deal with it. You know, there's not a win-win, and we, you know.
My concern, Carlos, is that if we don't say some, I mean, we may not need to say this, maybe we shouldn't be saying this, but the issues aren't going away for people and all of that, just because we remove this text, and I don't want to gloss over those concerns. So, I mean, it could be that maybe we need to head them in a different direction, and a horticulturist might be able to help us with that. Or, but we need to think about what sort of procedure are we gonna suggest? Call your lawyer? We need to, I would think we would wanna know what direction
Yeah.
we would do for the people who do have a problem,
Mhm.
rather than just wiping it out. Or probably, deleting it from our ones.
No, and I think that's the reason,
Maybe if the
Reasonable.
attorney could look at some previous case history. If this is likely has been a civil matter or, some has gone to, had some legal precedence. Maybe that would be,
In
Give
our
us-
community,
not in our, just in general, just to give us some assistance in kind of trying to navigate what's already been done. And learn from their mistakes or their issues, we can.
And sometimes you have to unwind from what you've done because what you think could be good policy, when you implement, you begin to see some of the flaws of it. And I think that's what's happened here. And this was a controversial issue, even amongst council. So, let's bring Paul in first. I'm gonna say to you, if the questions that you want, I guess, send them to Carlos. So, I hear you. I don't want Paul to have to listen to this whole meeting to get the gist of it, but I would say to Mr. Wallach, why don't you type up what that question was? Let's get that to the attorney. And let's give him a focus to be able to have a conversation at a future PCDC with us and see where it goes.
And if you could copy at least Carol, because I think Carol might have a little bit different concern than what you're concerned with.
Happy to do it.
That'd be great.
Good. All right, any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I think we'll move on to other business. And I see we have meeting minutes here.
Yes. Ms. Conrad put together a set for the May 4th, I believe. That is the date.
Thank you.
This week. Mhm.
That's the goal, is to try to be good neighbors for everybody. So,
Good night, sir.
before us is May 4th, 2023 and June 1st, 2023. Would somebody like to acknowledge receipt of these?
Not June first, that's the time.
Oh, what did I say? Oh, that's, what am I? Oh, I'm
That's-
reading the text amendment. Sorry.
I'll acknowledge.
Thank you for correcting me.
I was confused too.
And acknowledged by Brian Lewis. So we'll move on to staff reports.
All right, the first item is our next meeting is June 15th. We do have 2 house petitions that would be scheduled for review along with a subdivision plat. And then items that were deferred from that might give an opportunity to have Mr. Martin. If not, we'll schedule that for July. July 4th falls on a Tuesday. And our first meeting in July would be July 6th on that Thursday. And I'm asking for the commission to reschedule or cancel that meeting. Yes, it's just too difficult on a shortened week to get the preparation ready for the commission. In there.
I have no issues with it. Does anybody else? I think it's would be considered our summer holiday.
So that'll put us, after the meeting would be July 20th. Either I'll have them at the 15th next in 2 weeks, depending on the schedule, if not the 20th. And there. Outside of that, we've seen the progress continue up along the Olive Corridor. It is pretty slow there at Olive and I-170. In there, a lot of it is that's how difficult the site was and the utilities that have to be addressed. But finally, those 3 pole stubs that were at the corner of Olive and Price were removed, and that was a big feat because it was utility companies pointing fingers on who's responsible, and nobody wants to do it for free, and I can understand that and that process. Once that got removed, things started moving along that area. They had to reorder new mast arms for that will extend over Olive, and the reason why is that MoDOT required the developer in the U City side to do some improvements in the Olivet side. The developer for our development had already ordered the mast arms that would be necessary for the Olivet side. So now they needed to, things got changed and those are on order, but they're talking maybe within 2 weeks, you know, that we'd have full access in there. And one of the neat things that you'll see completed by August will be that the trail on the U City side that goes to not to the Shaw Park will be going underneath I-170. There'll be a mural that will be installed underneath I-170. It says Great Rivers Greenway in there, and then you'll have new crosswalks that lead into our side of the I-170 development, and then the I-170 development will extend that sidewalk to Hilltop, and then have a crossing that goes to Chevy's, and in that crossing they'll have like a little island in the middle. So if you didn't make the full crossing of Olive, you can actually stand in the middle in their mid-block crossing. So that would be a great improvement. What that does is that strengthens the connection of connecting that Hilltop Arrowhead neighborhood with the southern part of Olive in there. And then we're working on that sidewalk on Alice Place that'll connect that Hilltop Arrowhead neighborhood to the rest of the city on the western side. So what right now, pedestrian wise, they're kind of disconnected except for the use of Olive in there. So that's been a big goal as part of the process. We received the building plans for the first commercial building in there. That's going to be the one closest to the ramp. And if you saw in the Post Dispatch, the Paris Baguette will be one of his anchors on that site ground in there. And then he is working on lots 1 and 2, and hopefully we'll have something within the next couple of months before the commission regarding the user there.
Which are lots 1 and 2?
1 and 2 would be the one closest to Price and in the middle in there. It was designed as 2 possible lots or 1 consolidated lot, depending on the user. If it was 2 individual lots, the corner was going to have a drive-through, and then there was going to be a strip retail. Right now, he's talking to a single user that would use both lots, no drive-through.
When is the hotel?
The hotel would happen after what the hotel would want to open once construction is done with the office building. Remember, they want to open once construction is done with the office building. So
But it's interesting that construction traffic's gonna have to drive past the finished office building to get to the hotel.
that's why they want to open once the office building is completed.
No, I get that,
Okay.
but it's interesting for the office building people, I'm thinking, like, they were having construction kind of go. back.
They'll
I mean,
probably
there's
be,
no good-
no, and I understand, they'll probably be synced pretty close behind each other. So that, you know, the one thing is the hotel doesn't want their patrons to have to go
Okay.
through the construction site. So-
I understand
So-
that, but it's more that I'm in an office building or I'm in the apartments and then.
I would assume they'd be like
sooner.
the hotel being a little bit delayed, but they could kind of moving at the same time.
Okay.
So that's exciting. Well, in there, easy storage is going up. It's an interesting building to take a look at. It's always good to kind of look at, you know, what are the impacts on the back in there. We've heard concerns about, you know, our buffer standards and all that, which I think are pretty well. They had a more stringent buffer, which is the full 20 feet, and then they'll have a green wall in the back. So it won't be till the end that we'll have a better assessment of how that balance with the surrounding neighborhoods in there. But overall, I think it's coming around pretty quick in there. And I think that's all I have regarding the community center, which is 5 Oaks on Warson. They're you know, that they may get occupancies maybe by August, but they won't open to the public till late fall. And there, as they try to, you know, get all their tweaks and things going. And there are a lot of the parks should be going through grand openings during the summer. In there, I think there's scattered times in play. And then the rest, I'll leave it to our council liaison.
Yeah, the city still is in the process of decision-making and interviewing with regard to new city manager. And so some of these things we've kind of wanted to say, let's postpone a little bit of conversation till the new city manager comes in. It is our hope to really have that rec center open, hopefully September, October. We do have the National Night Out, Olivet Night Out on June 20th. It starts at 6 p.m. I will gladly tell our planners that Indian Meadows will have a mid-season trustee meeting on June 10th, and in our newsletter, we clearly touted the comprehensive plan survey and encouraged everyone in Indian Meadows to north side, get in there and participate. So I hope soon you might see a bump. I'm really hoping. With more.
You're pushing the vote. aren't
Yeah,
you?
yeah. But overall, it's a fun time. It'll be a good time. I hope, your subdivisions, want to participate. We've moved National Night Out back to June. We kept pushing it because of warmer weather, and then next thing you know, we're in September and it gets dark by 7. And, and I was kind of moaning and groaning. It takes an hour away from my daytime to be able to have more time with my community. So, we kind of relooked at it, and we're going to try this again, getting it back to June 20th. Look forward to you all continuing your wonderful work that you do here. We're continuing to be busy, and it still is exciting times. So thank you all. If you have any questions, don't hesitate.
Any questions for Missy? Seeing none? Do you have anything you would like to add?
Do not, well, I guess other than we will be at Indian Meadows subdivision meeting on June 10th. I think I have that date right.
And I think
Whatever that is. Yes, Rise will be there. Brian Hurd will be speaking. I'll simply be on hand for questions.
Good. All right. That being said, we'll close or adjourn at 9:30. Thanks, everybody. Sorry for so late.
Thanks, Chairman.
Several acres of the morning.
We're done.